And now welcome in person representatives from the Department of Employment and Workplace Relations. I understand that information on parliamentary privilege and the protection of witnesses giving evidence to Senate committees has been provided to you. The Senate has resolved that an officer of a department of the Commonwealth or a state shall not be asked to give opinions on matters of policy and shall be given reasonable opportunity to refer questions asked of the officer to the superior officers or to a minister. This resolution does not preclude questions asking for explanations of policies or factual questions about when and how policies are adopted. Commonwealth officers appearing today are also reminded the Senate order specifying the process by which a claim of public interest immunity should be raised. A copy of the order is available from the Secretariat. For the Hansard record, will you please state your full names and the capacity in which you'll be here today?
Thank you, Chair. My name is Faithfull. I'm the Deputy Secretary for Skills and Training in the Department of Employment and Workplace Relations.
Vicki Wilkinson, First Assistant Secretary, National Skills Reform Division.
Kimberley McDonald, Assistant Secretary, Fee-Free TAFE and Skills Funding.
Thank you.
Simon Booth, First Assistant Secretary, Policy, Performance and Inclusion Division.
Good, thank you very much. Now I invite you to make a short opening statement if you'd like, and at the conclusion of any remarks, I'll invite members of the committee to ask questions.
Thank you for the opportunity to appear today to discuss the free TAFE bill. The bill will support at least 100,000 free TAFE and vocational education and training places annually from 2027. In submissions and evidence provided to the committee, there has been a focus on the financial impact of free TAFE. I can confirm for the committee that funding was provisioned in the 2024-25 mid-year economic and fiscal outlook. Funding of $253.7 million over the forward estimates was provisioned, and ongoing funding of around $177 million each year from 2028-29. The bill sets out the framework for the delivery of free TAFE in partnership with states and territories. It will establish an ongoing commitment of financial assistance to states to deliver free TAFE, subject to a free TAFE agreement being in place. Free TAFE will deliver cost of living relief through the removal of tuition fees. It will be prioritised to those cohorts who typically face barriers to education and training and will be offered in fields of study in high demand and of national and state priority. Free TAFE builds on the 2023-2026 Fee-Free TAFE Skills Agreement, which is delivering over $1.5 billion in joint funding for 500,000 fee-free TAFE and VET places. From January 2023 to September 2024, there have been 568,451 enrolments in fee-free TAFE courses. Enrolments have been significantly higher than targets, demonstrating strong demand for the program. Enrolments have been strong across priority sectors. For example, there have been almost 151,000 care sector course enrolments and over 39,000 construction sector enrolments. Fee-Free TAFE has had a much higher participation rate by priority cohorts than the broader VET system. In 2023, First Nations students there was 6.7% of fee-free TAFE compared to 3.5% for VET more generally. Students with disability, 7.6% compared to 3.8% generally. Women, 61.8% compared to 46.2% generally, and regional and remote students were at 35.9% compared to 26.8% generally. The inclusion of these cohorts in the labour market is important given the current low rate of unemployment at 4%. There is also a growing body of evidence presented by Jobs and Skills Australia on the economic contribution people with a VET qualification can make. We understand from the submissions and also the hearings that there's been quite a bit of interest regarding the number of fee-free TAFE completions. Completions are one factor to consider when looking at the outcomes from the program. We have completion data to the end of September 2024, which is 20 months of data. This provides an early indication, noting that there is a time lag between commencements and completions. As discussed in the previous hearing, the standard practice of the National Data Custodian, NCVR, is to report actual completions 4 years after commencement. The number of completions has been steadily increasing over time. Since the commencement of fee-free TAFE, there have been 110,403 completions. For 2023 students, there have been 92,934 completions to September 2024. It is important, however, to consider a range of other factors when looking at completion numbers. In 2023, around 80% of government-funded VET students were part-time. Further, almost 90% of fee-free TAFE courses are full qualifications at Certificate 3 and above, which take longer to complete, with some courses taking multiple years. I also note that in the hearings there has been a lot of discussion about the role of private providers. All providers make a contribution to a vibrant, diverse and quality national training system that meets the needs of all Australians. Under the bill, free TAFE places are prioritised for delivery by public providers. Places may be available to non-TAFE providers in certain circumstances, such as thin markets, local conditions or specific cohort needs. This includes Aboriginal community-controlled and First Nations-owned RTOs, industry-led RTOs, adult and community education providers, and private RTOs. In the existing fee-free TAFE program, to 30 September 2024, 85.8% of provision was from public providers, including TAFE and dual sector providers. 12.5% was delivered by private providers and 1.7% by community-based adult education providers. The context is important as well, in that NCVR data shows that private RTOs received 20% of all government funding in 2023 from Commonwealth and states. Further, government funding for VET delivery and capital to private RTOs continues to grow. From 2022 to 2023, government funding for private providers increased by 10.9% and funding for TAFE increased by 8.1%. Free TAFE is one of many government measures to support the delivery of skilled workforce needs and to ensure all Australians can participate in the economy. More broadly, Commonwealth expenditure on VET is projected to be $5.1 billion in 2024-25. Ongoing free TAFE will support Australians to obtain the skills they need to access employment, and it embeds free TAFE as an enduring feature of the national VET system.
Thanks very much. Senator O'Sullivan.
Thank you very much. Is it possible to get a copy of that opening statement?
I understand
Yes, the Secretariat.
Secretary has it. If we can get a copy, I might just review some of what you've said and come back to those points. Firstly, I'm interested. Firstly, thank you for your time being before us today and your preparation for today's hearing. I'm very interested to understand the impact that free TAFE is having on the training pipeline. Can you provide the committee either today or on notice by I think it's the 21st of February, the number of apprentices and trainees in training by electorate as of NCVR's latest update, the June 2024 update?
Certainly, Senator, we can take that on notice, and I'm also happy to talk at a general level about the in-training numbers as well.
Okay, if it's quick, yep, sorry.
So I think what we're seeing with in-training numbers across the board, is we recognise that we had, as I've spoken before at estimates, a once-in-a-generation impact of the COVID pandemic and the injection of funding to support the response to the COVID pandemic. What we're seeing with our apprenticeship numbers is the impact of that, noting that the government has put in place incentives up until the end of this financial year for priority occupations. Overall, we're seeing in-training numbers remain relatively steady, particularly in those priority occupations, and which is reflective of that focus on priority occupations.
Okay. Last week we had the South Australian Skills Minister and Education Minister in front of us, and he said that they are collecting and have available the withdrawal and cancellation data for free TAFE across his jurisdiction. We've heard from NCVR that you're relying on state and territory data for fee-free TAFE. Why has the Commonwealth not requested the fail rate of fee-free TAFE from states and territories?
Sorry, Senator, could you just repeat
Why
the last bit?
has the Commonwealth not requested that cancellation data from the states and territories?
Senator, if I can just commence. So with the withdrawal data, there is no consistent definition for what a withdrawal is across states and territories. So if we did, so that means it's very hard to compare any figures. And I can also just pass to Dr. Simon Booth, who is responsible for data and evidence.
And maybe Mr. Booth can answer this, but just if there's no consistency across so can't you make a consistent request of all jurisdictions so that there's parameters that they can answer?
So there is work underway to update the national VET standard, and that was considered by skills ministers at their meeting at the end of last year, and I can refer you to the skills ministers' communique on that matter. That includes introducing effectively events in a student's journey, of which withdrawal would be one, into the data standard. It's not a straightforward matter to know when a student withdraws. So, for example, a student might feel ill and then be intending to return but not be in a position to communicate well with their training provider. So at what point a provider assumes a student won't return is something that needs to be negotiated between systems and states. And also then there's work to make sure then that the range of technical systems that the providers have in place are able to capture those events, and also that the staff in those organisations know how to identify and report them. So that process is underway, and I think Mr. King earlier referred to that. The updates to the National Data Standard are on the forward agenda for the Skills Ministers meeting later this year. It's part of the government's overall investment in improved vet data. So there's a program called Vet Data Streamlining, which is looking at basically better, faster vet data. It's a combination of both new systems to improve the timeliness of data and then better standards that better reflect the kinds of questions that you and others are asking of the vet system, and so that work's underway. It just takes time.
So I appreciate there's always reasons why someone would withdraw, and there's sickness. There's people are interested in maybe pursuing a different course. There's lots of maybe positive reasons why someone would withdraw, as well as there being negative reasons as well. But surely the provider at some point is making that determination, even if they're allowing even a little bit of time or even an extended time to determine whether a person has actually withdrawn. So that would be sort of recurring and indeterminate times. And then, but what we heard from South Australia is that they have that data.
So the South Australians will have a system, and they'll have a set of their accounting rules on how they measure that.
Okay.
To go to Ms. McDonald's point, each state don't do that in the same way. And so if we were to ask that for that data, we couldn't compare what's going on in South Australia, for example, to another state with confidence. So hence, I suppose, the thinking is, and this goes to the conversations I've had with Mr. King last year, is the prospect of free TAFE is enduring.
Sorry to labour the point, but can't you ask a question with parameters so that you are getting back a consistent response?
Well, I suppose the process we have to update the National Data Standard is the process by which we will develop a consistent response.
Ultimately, the reason for my questioning along this line is we've been asked as a parliament to decide on making a program permanent without the full data. And so there's been, unless you can point to any evaluation that we're not aware of, there's been no evaluation, and we don't have a full data set to fully know whether or not this program's been a success. I certainly hope it has been a success because a considerable sum of taxpayers' money has been put into it. So there's we're all cheering it on to be a success, but we can't know, and we're asked to make a decision about it being permanent without having all the data. So why is this not? Why is the department not? You're talking about making changes to ongoing, but we've been asked to make a decision here in this term.
I think Ms Wilkinson might want to comment on. We do collect data on free TAFE. It isn't. There's a question on the number of fields on the program that you collect, but that data is promising.
Yes. So, Senator, there is an ongoing cycle of review, monitoring, and evaluation for the existing fee-free TAFE, and that is proposed to continue for free TAFE and the bill. We receive quarterly reports from states and territories that provide a range of information, including enrolments, completions, enrolments by priority cohorts, and the sectors of the economy where those enrolments are. We analyse and look at those quarterly reports. So what we're seeing to date is significant enrolments in the program, 570,000, which is above the targets that have been set. We've seen very strong participation from equity cohorts who have barriers to education, and particularly women, with over 60% of the program being women and 35% of students from regional and remote areas. Later this year, we will be conducting a full evaluation of fee-free TAFE in collaboration with states and territories. That will look at a range of different factors.
And that's my point. Like that's happening later, and we've been asked now to make this program permanent. So,
Senator, as you would know from the legislation, it sets the broad framework and objectives of ongoing free TAFE. A lot of the detail will be in a free TAFE agreement to be negotiated with states and territories. So that evaluation will directly inform the parameters of the negotiation for the ongoing free TAFE agreement.
Can I just seek to clarify the role of NCEVA? Previously, and I think it was in the last estimates, were going around this, we were discussing this, and previously the Minister has also said that we have to wait for NCEVA's 4-year reporting cycle to know about the number of completions and withdrawals from fee-free TAFE. But as we've heard previously, from the previous witness, NCEVA are not tracking fee-free TAFE. So why have you told us that NCEVA's reporting cycle is material to the understanding of fee-free TAFE program? That's what you've said to us previously.
Yes, I think there's a couple of factors here. So NCEVA as the national data custodian take a 4-year cycle look. So it's a stock and flow model of students coming in, students going out over a 4-year cycle. What we have said previously is, in order to understand the broader impact of fee-free TAFE in the context of the entire vet system, you will want to align with that 4-year process. We are actively in conversations with our state and territory officials in the context of this potentially becoming an enduring program. We are actively in conversation with state and territory officials around what it would take to flag fee-free TAFE within the data sets that flow from state and territory governments into NCEVA as the independent data custodian. That's in the context of the effort relative to it being an enduring feature of the vet system. At the same time, as Ms McDonald has outlined, we are in a cycle of reporting with states and territories, and we are evolving that reporting to get more granular into the data as we go, recognising as well, coming back to sort of the point Dr Booth was reflecting on, which is how do we make sure each state and territory is collecting data in the same way, and we're comparing apples with apples essentially, which is the ultimate benefit of the NCEVA process, and that enduring embedding it in that data, that national data set, is that you get that consistency across all of the 8 states and territories. So I think there's a couple of different factors there.
Okay. I want to pass the call, if that's right, Chair, and come back. Just want to have a think.
That's okay. Senator Grogan.
Sure. Thanks for coming. Skills shortages has been discussed quite a lot throughout this inquiry so far. And you've talked a little bit about targeting cohorts and industry areas. Can you just unpack for us the sort of the framework for which industries, which courses are getting chosen for fee-free?
Yes, certainly, Senator. So under the fee-free TAFE skills agreement, it outlines a range of courses that are in national priority industries. If you just give me one moment. So this includes a range of areas, including agriculture, care, construction, early childhood education and care, technology and digital, and they're just some examples. I won't go through every single one. And those priorities are worked upon collaboratively with the Commonwealth and the states. So the state and territory governments obviously have a very strong understanding of their labour markets and their skills needs, and they look to identify priorities. They then determine which courses will be offered in each of those priority areas. And there is also flexibility within fee-free TAFE and with the proposed ongoing free TAFE, so that states or local areas can put forward their own priorities. So it's not just one set national list, because that would not meet the diverse needs of the economy. With the ongoing free TAFE, we will work with states and territories, and we'll use and work with information from a range of sources. So we'll look at Jobs and Skills Australia, look at their occupation shortage list. We'll obviously work with Jobs and Skills Councils who understand the needs in their own industries, and that's how we'll come to a future priority list.
So we had a witness earlier today who said that the construction elements weren't making any difference at all, and they weren't helping the construction industry. Would you say that's a fair comment?
Well, Senator, what I can point to is some of the data around construction enrolment.
Thank you.
So up from 1st of January 2023 to the 30th of September last year, there have been almost 40,000 construction sector enrolments in fee-free TAFE. In addition, the government funded fee-free construction in the budget last year. So that's $86.6 million for states and territories to deliver 20,000 construction places over the next 2 years. That also includes 5,000 pre-apprenticeship places. And in some instances, these are new courses that have been developed, but to give people a taster of different industries and what an apprenticeship would involve. So that's being rolled out this year and next year.
Right, so potentially those things will be on the ground this year.
Yes.
So maybe
Yes.
they just haven't seen it yet.
Yes, correct.
I think the point, though, that Ms McDonald made is already we've seen 39,000 enrolments, and now that additional focus 20,000 will have students enrolling commencing at the beginning of this academic year, so probably this week, was it? Or next week. I don't know when it starts. So we've already got significant enrolments in construction, and now we've got some dedicated positions aimed at bolstering that area.
Okay. The other comment that was made is that it's taking away from private providers. What would be your response to that?
I'll just pass to Dr. Booth, who has those figures.
So we haven't seen fee-free TAFE, if we look at our 2023 data, have a negative impact on the private training market. So what we've seen indeed is, so if we look in 2023, we've had a net growth in the number of private training providers of an additional 24 operating in the market. We've seen in total vet activity, we've seen the level of training at both TAFE and non-TAFE RTOs grow. And we've seen the overall level of government investment in TAFE and in private providers also grow.
Because I think the data from that year shows that it was 10.9% increase in funding to privates compared to 9 point something else. No.
For TAFEs, yes. Yep,
for TAFE.
Right.
So fee-free TAFE isn't sucking the life out of the private providers.
Well, that's not what the 2023 data suggests, no.
Okay, good. I didn't think it did.
Just adding to that and just reflecting on that, the evidence given previously that we were listening to, I think it is just worth noting as well that the skills agreement that sits under the fee-free construction does enable training providers to be, as well as it does enable a mix of private registered training organisations or TAFE auspice or partnership arrangements. So it does give that flexibility to states and territories to leverage the wider sector.
Okay, excellent. Because I think the strength in all elements of the sector is what we're after, because each of them provide something different, and the more effort we have across the board, the quicker we're going to address the skills crisis that we're facing. So on that, in addition to free TAFE or free TAFE going into the future, and what it's doing to help address the skills shortages, particularly in construction, but also in other areas as well, what other work is happening within skills and training and education in general that's supporting the skills shortage and the needs we have for our workforce into the future?
Yeah, so there's a significant investment both through the National Skills Agreement. So we have, through the National Skills Agreement, investment from the Commonwealth of $12.6 billion over the life of the agreement. It's important to note that then the agreement itself requires that state and territories match the Commonwealth contribution to those states and territories. So that's a $21.6 billion match from those governments. Within that $12.6 billion, noting that $11.3 billion of that is for places across the entire sector, there's a $1.3 billion investment in a range of things, including $320 million in TAFE centres of excellence, $100 million in building vet workforce capability, $155 million in the development of a national TAFE network to link TAFEs across the country, $214 million in closing the gap and in particular strengthening the ACO sector, $250 million to improve vet completions, and $142 million to invest in foundation skills. That then, in addition, we have around $1.9 billion in Commonwealth-owned funding. $1.4 billion of that goes into apprenticeships, $129 million into foundation skills, skills for education and employment, $117 million into the Jobs and Skills Council, which are a big part of the system in terms of linking us closely to industry and industry need, and $538 million is for income contingent loans for both vet and also support loans for apprenticeships. Then there is a suite of initiatives, including that are targeted initiatives, including, for instance, the Commonwealth Prac Placements, which is helping fund that period for vet students doing nursing, where they have to go onto a prac placement and do that unpaid. We've got a $60 million investment in Building Women's Careers grants, which is about working through and piloting different innovations to attract more women into advanced manufacturing, construction, net zero and construction. We've got investment in turbocharging the vet teacher workforce, and then we've also, the government has made recent decision around lowering indexation for contingent loans in terms of that impact for students and cost of living.
Great, thank you.
I think I'd just add to that. So obviously that's a series of programs the government's undertaking, but The other thing that's notable, I think, is that under the National Skills Agreement, we've introduced a shared stewardship approach to the skills system that brings together ministers from all jurisdictions with a shared vision of where the system should go. And we have released a national skills plan. It's the first one of its kind, and again, it unites jurisdictions around the vision for delivering skills into the economy and for bringing in, you know, students who might not otherwise have participated. And we have recently, at the end of November, each jurisdiction has published a jurisdictional action plan that demonstrates how their jurisdiction will work towards achieving the vision of the National Skills Plan and delivering on the ground the training and outcomes that industry, individuals and the economy as a whole needs.
Great, thank you. You talked earlier about the ability of the agreements that are done with the states and the Commonwealth for them to develop as they need, and how the program has an opportunity to sort of evolve and change into the future. Can you just give us a little quick history of what has evolved from the beginning to where we are now? Like, what changes have we seen in the program since it was first introduced?
Yeah, sure. So Fee-Free TAFE in 2023 was originally done as a one-year time-limited initiative, and it had a range of priority areas, most of which I outlined earlier. In moving to Tranche 2, which was the beginning of 2024, that provided an opportunity for states and territories and the Commonwealth to agree new course lists, so looking at the needs and priorities of the community and economy at that point. And so there was an adjustment in the course list. The other adjustment that was made at that point is that there was a decision that vet workforce training and assessment should also be a priority of Fee-Free TAFE. So that was then embedded in all of the course lists across states and territories. And to date, we've seen 23,081 enrolments in people undertaking Cert 4 in training and assessment through Fee-Free TAFE. So that's helping to build the vet workforce going forward. Another adjustment that the program has made, which I also touched on earlier, is fee-free construction. So that's the $86 million for states and territories to fund courses and places in those areas of high demand.
Great, thank you.
Thanks.
I have to hand.
You have to hand over? Okay.
I'll cede to Senator O'Sullivan.
Senator O'Sullivan.
Thank you. Can I also get, and appreciate this will probably be taken on notice, the list of courses that have been funded?
Yes.
And can I ask, is it full courses, full qualifications that are funded, or is there also the capacity to fund units of competency?
So we fund short courses, Senator.
Yeah.
So
not just a unit, you'd have to do a full qualification.
That's correct.
Yes.
Very happy to provide the
Thank
course
you.
list on notice.
And just quickly, can you just explain to me the eligibility criteria? So we understand that it's targeted at people in certain cohorts. So what's the eligibility criteria for, at the time of enrolment for an individual student?
So, Senator, states and territories each have different eligibility requirements in their own state and territory.
Yeah.
It's focused on priority cohorts, which I outlined earlier, but very happy to talk you through those priority cohorts. But it is also open to other Australians. It's not just those cohorts.
While I've been sitting, I've gone through a number of the jurisdictions, had a look at their websites and the enrolment details. I mean, none of those cohorts are captured in the actual or in the criteria. I mean, apart from just general, you've got to be an Australian, you've got to be resident of that jurisdiction, you've got to be over a certain age and not be in school, but nothing about Aboriginality or income or any of those targets. So how do we know that we're actually hitting? I mean, you've actually, I think it was in the opening statement, you talked about some of those cohorts being represented. So how are they being targeted then if it's not by enrolment?
So, Senator, like I'd have to look at each of those state websites, and so happy to take it on notice. But what I would say is that a lot of it is in terms of who they are promoting the opportunity to.
Okay.
So they might be targeting particular demographics, and I think the results are very clear when we look at the enrolment numbers for Fee Free TAFE, that it is successfully having participation from those cohorts.
So no one's turned away if they're not in that criteria?
Well, that would depend on the individual state and territory, and also states and territories do fund it differently. Some have demand-driven fee-free TAFE, others do have just fund a set number of places. Senator, to date, there have been 192,000 enrolments from young Australians. Mm-hmm. There's also been 34,000 enrolments from First Nations Australians and 140,000 enrolments from job seekers. So what we've seen is much higher participation in fee-free TAFE from those priority cohorts than we see in the vet sector generally.
Yeah.
Sorry, and you may have already said this, but what data set is that being collected in?
So that states provide the Commonwealth with quarterly reports detailing enrolments, completions, priority cohorts, and the courses and their sectors.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I could continue to labour the point about cancellations as to why we're not asking for that, but we have gone over it. Can I just ask, in relation to... So just in your opening statement, Ms Faithfull, you did talk about, I've just lost it off my page, but about the NCEVA's, here it is, the standard practice of the National Data Custodian, NCEVA, is to report actual completions 4 years after commencement. So given that, I just sort of want to go back to that point, like given that they're not collecting fee-free TAFE data, why is that a relevant point to make here when we're talking about fee-free TAFE, given that they're not actually even collecting that?
So it's relevant, so outside of the point around where we are having those discussions around the flagging of fee-free TAFE, it's relevant in the context of understanding how fee-free TAFE is travelling next to the rest of the sector. So the NCEVA 4 year cycle is the entire sector, public, private, community, ACOs, etc., independent RTOs. So when we talk about the question of relativity, that's important because it is the formal agreed process. It's got the rigour, etc. It's got the consistency across what is being asked for and how it's being collected. And it's not to say, so we are actively in a very active, constant conversation with states and territories around the collection as per their reporting requirements. But we are in a conversation around making sure that we assess that data, that we're looking at making sure we are comparing the data in the right way. So I would say we're very focused on ensuring we have that data, but it doesn't have the same enduring feature, the same systematised nature that the NCVR has.
Yeah.
And can I add an additional point, Senator? Those 4 year figures are the figures that people talk about when they talk about vet completion. So, there's the national...
Yeah, and I understand
rate. And so I suppose there's a
benefit
concern
of having that
if you pull an earlier figure, it will be compared inappropriately to a 4 year figure. Like it becomes an unhelpful point of comparison. What we see if we look at the number of completions we've seen to date and what states have reported to us, it's in line with the number of completions you'd see in those courses when they're not delivered through fee-free TAFE. So we're confident we're on track around completions. We're confident that what we're seeing in the fee-free TAFE figures is broadly in line with what you'd see in broader vet completion figures. And then we will be, as it becomes then, if the Parliament determines that this should be an ongoing feature, then we will work with the states and territories and National Data Custodian to ensure it's brought into the reporting system so that then those points of comparison in an enduring way can be made, and that everyone's robust, that they're robust, that we're confident, and that the NCEVA does independently of the Commonwealth.
Can I ask has the department received any complaints in relation to fee-free TAFE?
Senator, I will take that on notice, but not that I'm aware of.
Not that you're aware of. Anyone else at the table aware?
No, not that we're aware of.
Okay. If you can come back to us. One of the complaints that I've had to me is that, I guess in the way that it's not really necessarily your issue, more in the way that politicians describe it. And so I've had people come to me and say, oh, TAFE isn't free. You know, I've gone to TAFE and it's not free, I've got to pay. And, you know, so is there an issue in terms of how it's been marketed, how it's been promoted? Have you had any... I'm just interested in understanding if there's been any feedback along those lines. We've got it, we've heard it. Surprised the department hasn't.
We haven't, and we can confirm that
Okay,
we'll check
thank
that
you.
we haven't had any complaints to our website. But
Can I get from you, what's the level of growth in vet training that you can provide to us? Can I get
Dr. Booth?
what figures have you got there with us today? I'm happy for you to
Yep, I
take
can-
a broader question on, or a
talk
detailed
you
question
through
on notice.
this. Sorry, let me just flip to the right section. So, are you interested in government-funded vet or all vet?
Government funded, I guess, yeah.
So, in 2023, there were 1.349 million government-funded vet students, and they were enrolled across 1.583 enrolments, so a small number enrolled in multiple courses.
How far does your data that you've got in front of you go back?
Oh, look, we'll use the NCVR data, and it goes back to the 80s, I think. So
Can you give me do you have a 2020 data figure there?
Yeah, I do have 2020. There in 2020 there are 1.3 million students, so about just under 50,000 less than there are in the system.
Does that that's part of that? That would include some COVID period, wouldn't it?
The 2020, so we do know in 2020 a number of states put in place COVID responses, including large numbers of short courses, in particular in New South Wales. So there was certainly probably a COVID-specific 2020 response.
Is there maybe can I go back so I'm clear of any COVID stuff? Can I go back to 2019?
Oh yeah, so 2019, yeah. So there were 1.4. So there's about 100,000 more students in government-funded vet today than there were before the pandemic.
So now it's
1.246 million overall in 2029, and then 1.349 in 2023.
Did you meant to say 2019?
Oh, sorry, 2019. Apologies, Senator. I can give you some
Back to the
apprenticeship
future.
figures as well, if that's helpful.
Sorry, so let me stick with that. So it's 2019 was
1.246.
2019.
Yes.
Yep.
And
And then this year?
1.349.
Okay. Yeah, if you've got the apprentice numbers there, that'd be good.
Let me just shift to that section. Actually, now I offered that, and then I just can't find it in my
I'm
folder.
happy for you to take it on notice.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
fine.
So we'll do the 2019 to now comparisons.
Yeah, that'd be helpful. Just checking. Just one last line of question. Has anyone in the department asked to pull fee-free TAFE enrolment data for any particular jurisdictions, or any particular regions across Australia?
Sorry, Senator, could you repeat that? Have we been asked to pull the data for fee-free TAFE for any particular region?
Yes.
Yes, so at the current time, it's not part of the reporting template, the location of students. It's just whether they're regional or remote or major cities. And we are working with states and territories to see if we can get greater data by locality to help inform our analysis and understanding of the program.
Okay. So was anyone in the department asked to pull fee-free TAFE enrolment data for Albury and Griffith?
I think I'd probably just want to take that on notice so that we don't, we'll just double check.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah.
because a media story by Madeline McKinley in the Australian Community Media Papers referenced specific free TAFE data for Albury and Griffith. So I'm keen to understand if the department has been asked to provide free TAFE data by electorate or statistical areas to the Minister's office.
Can I take that on notice?
You certainly can.
I would
So,
consider that obviously the states also hold this data, so because they report it to us, so
Sure.
because potentially other
yep,
sources.
and that's fine. But my question is, you know, has the department been asked? Have you been asked to? And if you've got it, then can any electorate or statistical data on free TAFE be provided to the committee, please?
Yes, happy to take that on
Yep.
notice.
Thank you. Chair, I think that's us. So.
Good, thanks. I've got a few questions. Might just on just want to just get clear on the consultation process and the ongoing consultation that takes place regarding fee-free TAFE. What are some of the business organisations that you've had conversations with so far? What would that entail? Who that might entail? Just you may want to give some examples just off the top of your head, or just what you've got in front of you. You may want to give some other examples on notice as well, but just a flavour.
Yeah, sure. So Senator, with fee-free TAFE, obviously our main delivery partner and the people that we work with most closely are state and territory governments in formulating ongoing free TAFE, particularly looking at what sectors of the economy it should be focused on and also which priority cohorts. We will consult with a broad range of stakeholders, including many of the people that have appeared before the committee over today and last Friday. And I think that we will also, in particular, work with jobs and skills councils as the Australian government's I don't know what the exact word is, but delivery sort of partner, because they have representatives from industry in each specialised field. So they will be a key partner. We'll also look at Jobs and Skills Australia data, particularly around occupational shortages, to help inform the negotiation parameters for the free TAFE agreement.
And I think in particular with Jobs and Skills Australia, I mean, we will leverage their Ministerial Advisory Board, which comprises of a very diverse set of representatives, but in particular reflects, for instance, Business Council of Australia, ACCI and AIG. And so leveraging that really useful advisory board to inform these types of key discussions will be something we do and will continue to do.
And I suspect that the state jurisdictions that are also part of the consultation process and also the partnership in this area would have similar consultation systems that would apply and have always applied in their TAFE systems. And you're saying yes to that, to your knowledge as well?
Sorry.
You're saying yes, that's correct to your knowledge?
Yes, indeed. As my colleagues have referred to, a key part of this is also about states and territories determining, so while it's guided by the broader National Skills Agreement and the process that we want to undertake each time, it is also focused on their skills priorities and cohorts, and so that is in dialogue with their industry representatives, community representatives, etc.
So the legislation enables flexibility to improve the implementation of the program as it continues to evolve, is that correct?
Yes.
Yes, Senator. The legislation will be operationalised through free TAFE agreements with states and territories, and we'll put in place flexible mechanisms for those to be adjusted as the needs of local economy changes.
And could you, just with the adjustment, is there any sort of expansion on that? Because just concerned about, there's been a question about the agility of the program into the future, and is there a capacity for input and evolving in the program? So maybe you could just expand what how
Yeah,
evolution
yes,
of the courses in the
certainly.
program
Yeah.
would take place.
So, Senator, I should say, if the bill is introduced, then there'll be a whole range of negotiation parameters, and we'll work with states and territories on the design and delivery of ongoing free TAFE. There exists currently under the fee-free TAFE program an ability to adjust and shift the course lists and also to change priority areas if required. And so that process will continue with the new free TAFE agreement.
Because I'm deeply concerned that, and thank you for your evidence, because I was deeply concerned about some advice that was given, some evidence that was given earlier today to say that it was almost implying that it was static. Would that be what would you say if someone would, if there was a assertion that this is a static system?
No, so I think Senator and
I might put a bit more context too.
Yeah.
So 100,000, we lock in 100,000 where we give certainty to the Australian public, certainty to our kids, certainty to those people that want to be retrained about opportunities at some point in the future when their personal career path might be going in a particular direction, or opportunities where they might want to change career path, businesses making decisions into the future, particularly for small and medium-sized businesses. That forecasting forward is particularly important, but for all business. So you might sort of describe how the 100,000 fee-free TAFE positions are evolving and improving and agile to what's happening in needs.
And I think it's an important question and if we put fee-free TAFE in the context of the broader National Skills Agreement and the broader skills and training reforms that are occurring, as Ms Wilkinson referred to earlier, the National Skills Agreement has been designed to be adaptive and responsive. So it has a set of outcomes and a set of indicators that will help us measure how we're going to those outcomes. But it's absolutely premised on the idea that as data comes through the Jobs and Skills Australia and the establishment of that sort of macro whole of nation data collection, then they are informed by Jobs and Skills Councils, which are collecting that sector industry-based data. That is feeding into those ministerial discussions to inform where those different needs are, and the objective is to ensure that the system can better respond to where those labour force needs are. So, for instance, in 2024, skills ministers added housing construction as a national priority under the National Skills Agreement. We can imagine a scenario potentially where, given the uptake in, say, care and early childhood, you might have a scenario in a couple of years' time where you take those off the priority list if we're filling the gaps, and then you add something else in terms of where you want that focus for fee-free TAFE. So it is absolutely intended both through the architecture of the skills system, through the agreements that then embody that architecture, and then I think in the bill itself, part of what we've sought to do is ensure that flexibility is captured there, and you might want to talk about some of the...
Thanks. Yes, as Ms Faithfull said, the bill is constructed in a way that there's flexibility, and obviously the underlying agreement that's negotiated is flexible. I think Ms McDonald already spoke to the fact that the teacher training course has come into the second tranche of fee-free TAFE in response to demand from states, and that sort of agreement will underpin this legislation and demonstrate the same flexibility that we've seen to date. I think also, when you review the objects of this legislation, there's terminology like at least 100,000 fee-free TAFE places. So 100,000 is not a limited number, it's at least, and those underlying agreements will allow the expansion beyond 100,000, and obviously will be supported by the financial funding of that. And again, the objects talk about workforce areas in high demand, and as Ms Faithfull has flagged, over time those areas may change, and there will be flexibility in the underlying agreement to reflect those changing demands. So I think this is premised on the fact that both the legislation and the underlying agreements will be nimble and agile and respond to the needs of the economy, of the priority cohorts, and of obviously of employers.
Thank you. This point, I'm not necessarily asking you to respond to this, but I just wonder if the BCA is listening to this afternoon, or if they're going through the transcript. I'm putting a question on notice to them, and I expect an answer, because one or two things happened this morning. Either it was a complete misrepresentation, or they don't know what they're talking about. And I'd hazard to guess it's a misrepresentation, because as you've just explained to us, there's at least 100,000 positions, not a finite amount. The flexible overarching architecture of the scheme means it is flexible, unlike was trying to be presented earlier today. It does go to the objects of high demand, and as they change, so will change to the flexibility for the scheme. And it does take into account both the responsibilities to the economy and respond to the economy, but also the priority cohorts that both employers and others wish to see. So I'm deeply concerned about the evidence they gave this morning, and I'll pursue that matter further. Senator O'Sullivan, you wanted to ask a question arising out of what I've just raised. I've got some more questions to raise, so other matters.
Just at the end, yeah.
Separate matters?
Mine's not a follow-up from what you've just said.
Oh, right, thanks. Now, I just want to go then to Job Trainer program, which is a previous program. And that was a program under the coalition government, under previous government, now opposition. Now, I understand that the data collected under that program, could you just run me through how that data was collected, how that data worked, if you're able to?
So, Senator, that data was collected in a similar way to the fee-free TAFE agreement. It was also data provided directly by states and territories to the Commonwealth. It also included similar reporting areas, including enrolments and completions.
Right, so that goes then to the data was, is there more data collected under fee-free TAFE, or is it similar?
So, Senator, I don't have the exact Job Trainer reporting template with me to compare to the fee-free TAFE. It is broadly similar, but there would be some differences reflecting the different designs of those two programs.
All right, so if you can maybe just take that on notice as well,
sure.
just about that detail, some of the more detail, but
no problem.
And just to clarify something, the question under the previous coalition, now the opposition under Job Trainer, was there agreement required for the states to report cancellations or withdrawals?
No, Senator.
Right. Thank you very much. So it's very, very much the same. I'll hand to you. If we've got time, I will ask one question, but I doubt we're going to have time.
I now have two questions, because I just want to follow up on that one. Are you aware of any legislation attempt by the previous Parliament, any attempt by the previous Parliament to legislate making the Job Trainer Fund permanent?
Senator, I'm not aware of that, but I'd have to go and have a look at the history of
Thank
Job
you.
Trainer.
Now, so my final question is, if this Parliament wasn't to pass this legislation, is there anything that would prevent a future government from enabling fee-free vocational training under the current legislation framework that we have?
So, under the National Skills Agreement and under the Federal Financial Relations, there is capability there for a government to put in place a funding agreement that would allow for the transfer of funds in relation to, say, fees, free fees for students. I think the thing would be that would be bound by the time period of those agreements. So the National Skills Agreement is a 5-year agreement. And so that would probably be the caveat I would say, is that you would be bound by those times. You'd be bound by the different requirements under the Federal Financial Relations, including some of the reporting requirements, and we've had conversations about some of the challenges in terms of reporting within that frame, so those would be some of the considerations you'd have to take into account in thinking without the benefit, I guess, of legislation.
Okay, but a future government can continue to fund fee-free TAFE or fee-free vocational training, whatever it decides to do, even if this bill doesn't pass. Notwithstanding the limitations of time, you've said 5 years, and other things, but...
Yeah, and I think the limitations on time and sort of the dependency, so I think what the certainty gives us is something that we've reflected on earlier, which is the ability then to embed it into the architecture and the systems. And so particularly that data process means that we can, in terms of the effort and the costs associated with putting that in place. And I note Mr. King's advice earlier that there's still a question on kind of effort and cost, but it does mean that you can make those investments and get that certainty in the system. Even the teacher trainer workforce, the capital investments in terms of infrastructure, that all can flow from that certainty. But certainly, a TAFE agreement that lasts for 5 years does give the sector a level of certainty, but I think it's been 10 years.
Schools are funded along the same way. I mean, there's...
Sure, but I think it's actually been about 10 years since we've had a 5-year agreement in place. So that I'm just conscious that agreements, have their own challenges and dynamics, and
but there'll still need to be, even under this, agreements reached between each of the states.
Yes, but you will have, I think the piece there too is that by having the Commonwealth Parliament, having that legislation there, that's certainly a motivating factor for all state and territory jurisdictions around their engagement with the negotiation of that agreement and their commitment to that agreement.
I think we're out of time, but can I say one more?
Yeah, just a bit like if you're really quick. I'm feeling very generous. You did such a good job.
Senator Brockman asked a question earlier today about the is there anything to stop the states from, if this is legislated, if the states just pull away from their commitments and expect the Commonwealth just to fully fund it?
So I think I've heard that question being asked. It's a good question. One of the things that we have really built into the National Skills Agreement is some levels of assurance around that to minimise any cost shifting. You've got an agreement with another government of another jurisdiction. They're bound by their requirements in terms of both their legislation, but also their various, oversight agencies, etc. So I think there is within an NSA there are requirements around how that money is spent within the federal financial relations. There are requirements about reporting on how that money is spent, and in particular, as we've mentioned before, we've built in that requirement around matching as well. So reflecting forward, more specifically to your question, Senator O'Sullivan, I can't necessarily predict. Each state and territory is a government within its own right, and will take actions within their own right. But we would be using the similar ways in which we've framed agreements to date, which really does put boundaries around how, and in terms of the reporting and the requirements around how that money is used. And I think limits the ability of a government to move that funding around and fund things outside of the requirements that are set in the agreement.
And can I just add to Ms Faithfull's evidence, the fee-free TAFE agreements that have been negotiated to date, the 12-month and then the 2-year, have all been negotiated on the basis of shared funding. So that has been the basis for the negotiation, and the Commonwealth's offer in terms of its funding offer to a jurisdiction has been on the basis of a shared funding arrangement to deliver the number of places that the jurisdiction has signed up for.
But isn't the Commonwealth's position, negotiating position, weakened if the other party knows, well, you're on the hook?
So both the 12-month agreement and then the subsequent 2-year agreement, the number of places that jurisdictions were to deliver were known, and we negotiated on that basis, and the Commonwealth had an offer of money. So in the negotiation, those parameters were known, so that didn't weaken the position of the Commonwealth. And in fact, I think the legislation really embeds the parameters so that there's, you can't move away from those parameters. The agreements have to fit under those, and they will be defined in legislation. So arguably those parameters are more embedded in the negotiation than they were previously.
Chair's been very generous to me. Thank you.
Good, thanks. And I think that if I'm getting this with my political commentary, I'm not asking you to make any comment about that, but we're embedding, obviously, the proposal is to embed 100,000 plus fee-free TAFE positions. It means that an incoming government, that if it had the view that it was a waste of money having fee TAFE, that there is actually already an obligation. In regards to negotiations, on your point, Senator O'Sullivan, if there is an overarching pool of money, there's an overarching pool of money, but with criteria specifically stated through this legislation. So I know you'd like to get rid of it, but you're not going to get rid of it if the legislation's put through. So with that political statement, I'm going to ask you to make a comment. I'll then say thank you very much for your time this afternoon, on Friday afternoon. You've taken any questions on notice. Could you please return the answers to the Secretariat by Friday the 21st of February 2025. That concludes today's hearing, and thanks to all witnesses who appeared and to Hansard and Broadcasting, as always, in the Secretariat, who did a wonderful job today. The committee has agreed that responses to questions on notice should be provided by Friday the 21st of February 2025. The committee stands adjourned. Thank you.